Picture two birds nesting in the same forest in the same year, living through the exact same warm spring. One raises a full, healthy brood. The other barely gets a single chick into the air. Same weather. Wildly different outcome. Why does that happen? For decades, climate change and birds have been talked about mostly through one lens: timing. Spring arrives earlier, so birds lay their eggs earlier. That part of the story is well documented, almost boring at this point. But here is the question almost nobody stopped to answer properly. Once a bird nests earlier because of a warmer spring, does it actually end up raising more chicks? Or fewer? For most of modern ornithology, that question sat unanswered. It matters more than it sounds. Since 1970, North America alone has lost close to 3 billion birds. That is roughly 1 in every 4 birds that used to fill the skies. Europe has seen similar collapses in farmland and grassland bird species. Habitat loss and pesticides get most of the blame in the headlines. But there is a quieter question hiding underneath all of it. Are the birds that do survive still able to reproduce at the same rate they used to? Think about what a single degree of warming actually demands from a wild bird. It has to time its arrival at a breeding ground it may not have visited in 8 months. It has to know when insects will peak, when leaves will unfurl, and when the eggs it lays will hatch into a world with enough food waiting. Humans struggle to predict a heat wave 3 weeks out. Birds are making that bet with their entire year of reproduction. Have you ever noticed how some birds seem to handle a changing world just fine, nesting happily in your backyard year after year? While others, ones you used to see every spring, seem to be quietly disappearing. That contrast, thriving versus vanishing, sits right at the center of this story. Here is a pattern worth sitting with for a second. Small birds that never leave home for the winter tend to do fine, sometimes even better, in a warmer climate. Larger birds, especially the ones that migrate thousands of miles twice a year, tend to struggle. Size and travel habits, not the temperature itself, seem to decide who wins and who loses. Why would a bigger body be a disadvantage here? Larger animals generally have a slower pace of life. Longer time to reach adulthood, fewer breeding attempts per lifetime. A sparrow can improvise its way through a strange spring far more easily than a large migratory shorebird can. And why would migration make things harder? A bird wintering in West Africa cannot check the weather forecast for a forest in Scandinavia. It relies on cues like day length, an instinct honed over thousands of generations. If the breeding ground warms up faster than those old cues predict, the bird arrives at the wrong moment. Either before its food source has appeared, or after the peak has already passed and moved on. Scientists call this a mismatch, one of the most quietly consequential ideas in modern ecology. It is not that warming itself kills chicks directly. It is that warming breaks the choreography between predator, prey, and the fragile timing window a nestling needs food the most. Here is a number worth remembering. Global average temperatures have climbed by roughly 1 degree Celsius over the last century. That might sound small enough to shrug off. But to a bird whose entire reproductive strategy is built around split-second timing with insect emergence, 1 degree can be the difference between a nest full of healthy fledglings and an empty one. So which birds are actually thriving in this new, warmer world? Generally, the small, non-migratory ones. A resident chickadee or sedentary sparrow can adjust its nesting date almost seamlessly as spring shifts earlier. They do not have thousands of miles of ocean and unpredictable weather standing between them and their nesting ground. And which ones are struggling the most? Larger migratory species, shorebirds, some seabirds, birds that cross entire hemispheres to breed. They are the ones showing up too late, or occasionally too early, relative to when their chicks' food supply actually peaks. Nest predation adds another twist. Warmer springs often mean earlier leaf growth, and earlier leaf growth means better cover for a hidden nest. For some species, that alone reduces the odds a predator finds the eggs before they hatch. An unexpected upside buried inside an otherwise worrying trend. There is also a distinction between birds that raise one brood a year and birds that squeeze in 2 or 3. Multi-brooded species can sometimes turn a warmer year into an opportunity. More time, more broods, more total chicks by year end. Single-brooded species do not get that flexibility. They get one shot, and if the timing is off, the whole year is a loss. All of this raises an uncomfortable question for anyone who assumes climate change simply means bad news for wildlife, full stop. The real picture, at least for birds, is messier, more selective, and in some ways more unsettling. Some species are being quietly sorted into winners and losers based on traits they cannot change, how big they are, and whether they migrate. So does the story end there, birds mostly adapting, a few thriving, a modest overall decline? Not quite. Because the scale needed to actually answer this question, honestly, is enormous, far bigger than any single research team monitoring one patch of forest could ever manage alone. That is exactly the gap a team of international researchers set out to close. Between 1970 and 2019, a 50-year window spanning the exact period global temperatures have been climbing fastest. Researchers tracked 201 separate bird populations, spanning 104 species, on every inhabited continent. To pull this off, the team combined published research with something rarer, personal collaboration. Between October 2018 and April 2019 alone, they reached out to 313 scientists who had spent years, sometimes decades, quietly logging nesting data. 101 of them agreed to share it. The final dataset, 745,962 individual clutches. Not estimates, not models, actual monitored nests. Tracked female by female, season by season across 5 decades. For every population, the team calculated how the average number of fledged chicks per breeding female changed year over year. Then checked that trend against local temperature records, rainfall, body mass, migratory habit, latitude, and a human footprint index. The overall verdict: in 114 of the 201 populations, 7% offspring production declined over the study period. In almost a fifth of those, the decline was statistically significant. The remaining 87 populations, 3% actually produced more chicks over time. Averaged across every population studied, the overall trend was a decline of about 0.01 standard deviations in offspring production per year. It sounds tiny, almost forgettable. But compounded across 50 years and hundreds of populations, researchers say it adds up to a real, measurable drop in the number of birds fledged into the world each year. And just like the general pattern predicted, latitude did not matter, legal protection status did not matter. Even the human footprint index, roads, buildings, farmland, nightlights, did not reliably predict which populations were struggling. What did matter consistently was body mass. Sedentary species heavier than roughly 1 kilogram, and migratory species heavier than about 50 grams, tended to see offspring production fall as local temperatures rose about 0.1 degrees Celsius per year. Smaller, non-migratory birds often moved in the opposite direction entirely. Migratory species overall fared worse than sedentary ones. Only the very smallest migrants seemed to dodge the pattern. It is exactly the mismatch story playing out at planetary scale. Multi-brooded species got a small, genuine climate bonus. Their nest success improved as temperatures rose. likely tied to earlier vegetation growth, hiding nests from predators sooner in the season. Single-brooded species showed no such benefit. Clutch size itself barely budged with climate at all. The only trait that reliably predicted a smaller clutch was, once again, a larger body. The research team is careful about one thing. This is not a simple, direct cause and effect. Warming interacts with a species' size, its migratory strategy, and how many broods it attempts each year. It is that tangle of interaction that ultimately decides whether a population gains or loses. There is also an honest limitation worth naming. The dataset leans heavily toward Europe and North America. With far fewer long-term records from the tropics, the part of the planet holding the largest share of the world bird diversity. The true global picture may shift once more of that data comes in. One more twist worth sitting with. Multiple surveys have already documented steep, alarming declines in total bird numbers across whole continents. That 3 billion birds lost since 1970 figure mentioned earlier. Yet this 50-year analysis found only a modest overall decline in offspring production. If chicks are not the main problem, what is? The answer, probably adult and juvenile survival, not reproduction, is doing most of the damage to overall bird numbers. A question the data here could not fully answer, one future research still needs to chase down. So the next time you notice a bird nesting successfully in your own backyard year after year, know that it likely is not an accident of luck. It might be a small, sedentary species quietly winning a bet that a much larger, longer distance traveler is currently losing.